Hi, everybody. My name is Gary Gomes. I talk to you every week about Vedic astrology and its effect on your lives and the lives of people around the world. Uh, I do I do have an extensive background in Vedic astrology, and so I've been a practicing astrologer for 32 years. I also teach astrology. I also offer astrology courses. You can contact me for these services at 508 525 0001. And let's see now, what else do I want to say? We are going to be setting up some new guests over the next few weeks. Uh, I am going to be getting in some new equipment, by the way. And again, I don't want to make this all techie, but everything should look a lot clearer and a lot nicer on the new equipment. So, if without further ado, let's and it depends on when you'll see that, whether or not it'll be next week or the week after. I don't know. It depends on how quickly I adapt to it. Okay. And We'll be making a lot of technical improvements in the future. I am working on a book. I am also working on my school, which is in full flight, and working on uh, attracting more students and also more readings. If you're interested in reading, again, 508 525 0001 is the best way to contact me. You can text me at that phone number, or you can contact me at neibas@comcast.net. Or else if you want to take courses, that's a good place to contact me too. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter and LinkedIn. Okay, if you're interested in looking me up there. All right, so let's look at the chart for this week. Let's get right into it because it's been a long week for me, and I'm kind of anxious to look and see what the week holds for all of us. We did start off last night with a beautiful Moon Jupiter conjunction. I'll show you the chart in a second. Okay, so this is, let me just do this, upload this 2 more times just to make sure it's playing properly. And let's see now, share. And new share. And I'm also hoping to do a broadcast on New Year's predictions with Lolita Donatella Rabak very soon. So I would stay tuned for that. Okay, so we'll announce that. We'll probably do that within maybe a couple of weeks, I think, maybe sooner. And I'll also do my own predictions for the new year relatively shortly. I'll give you a brief introduction to that tonight. So basically, excuse me, basically, I hope you can see the chart. I'm going to try it one more time just because I'm a little bit. We have a Moon Rahu conjunction, and Rahu likes 4, so I'll start it again. And Rahu's, for those of you who are not versed in astrology, Rahu's an anxiety-producing planet. Is very powerful in terms of granting earthly desires, but a little bit less sure of itself in terms of, well, let's say it's placed in the world and it's a little bit paranoid and a little bit insecure. So we have a Moon Rahu conjunction right now, so that's where a lot of my insecurity is coming from, right in the sign of Aries. Okay, so this is pretty much, so Rahu's been giving us a lot of problems over the past year and a half. I just found out the other day that the president of South Africa is undergoing impeachment hearings. You're going to see a lot of other politicians, a lot of other leaders no matter where they are in their party, under attack. And it won't be even. Keep that in mind. It won't be consistent. So let's say if you see, uh, let's say Joe Biden will be up for a few months, and then somebody else will be up for a few months, having trouble being taken seriously or being attacked. Donald Trump will be in the news as he's been a lot lately, and you'll see a lot of negative press coming out about former President Trump over the coming weeks. This is pretty standard for Rahu going over Aries. Um, it's really it's kind of an interesting composition because the last time this happened was around 2000, or I believe it was around 2003, 2004, and we had a lot of problems with um, the current then President Bush being criticized for his handling um, of the invasion of Iraq. I'm sorry, of uh, being criticized for his handling of prisoners, etc., and also Tony Blair being criticized for his ongoing support of President Bush. And so you'll see a lot of disruptions in governments and a lot of disruptions in trade. A lot of people don't remember this, but we had really serious ramifications from serious economic ramifications from the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center, and they weren't hidden, but there was a definite economic downturn, and it was a very slow recovery. It wasn't as deep as 2007, 2008, but it was definitely broadly felt. I mean, when you shut down air travel and transportation for and everything was suspended. Nobody, I won't say nobody remembers that, but everybody was panicky. Everybody was looking in their mail um, for um, disease bearers. That was a little bit earlier. That was like right after 9/11, but basically that was still in the public consciousness. There was a lot of paranoia around foreigners, and um, and essentially we're seeing the same kind of a pattern happen right now, where we're seeing a lot of people, a lot of um, undocumented aliens being accused of being criminals, and undoubtedly some are. But not every undocumented alien is coming over here giving selling drugs or attacking people. But there are enough stories in the media that make it problematic. Also, I can remember being in a training in right after 9/11, and this a little bit before the Rahu and Aries transit, but it was still very telling. Where the trainers, I worked for the state, and the trainers were telling us, well, this is what the United States deserved for bombing all those countries all those years, and it was exactly the wrong thing to say at that particular point in time. So you had, I think, pretty interesting dynamics going on in the United States at that time, and our memories are short. That's why one of the reasons that I'm trying to express this. There was such hatred, especially especially after the initial boost of enthusiasm for President Bush. There was such hatred levied at George W. Bush after a short while, and that Rahu, President Aries, does that. K2 in Libra will disrupt supply lines. If we go back to about 1983, which would have been the next earlier time, we had essentially one of the deepest recessions in the United States history, and one of the longest lasting post-war recessions. It started under Carter in 79 and ended in 1983. But there was a large attempt, there was an assassination attempt, as you may recall, on President Reagan. And essentially, a lot of this goes back to panic. It goes back to inciting, and there was a lot of fear of terrorism at that time as well, based upon incidents that happened in the late 1970s. So I think one of the things, some of these trends, although not precise, are relatively consistent with Rahu's transit over Aries. They're and like I said, these aren't exact, so I'm not saying that, so we're going back 19, 19, 19. So essentially it would have been 1993, 1984, and before, and into that 1965, 66, where we had an escalating war in Southeast Asia, increasing resistance to the war, and also the development of quote unquote youth culture and spread of psychedelics and the generation gap and all that other nice stuff, as well as the Great Society, happening all at the same time. So, and the expansion of the Vietnam War, obviously. So you have all these things that tend to make people a little bit antsy or nervous. And this is more like the 1960s than like then really, I'm sorry, not 1993, I'm sorry, 2003, I meant to say before. And this is more like the 1960s than because it coincides with the Jupiter-Saturn cycle that happened around the same time too. So I think one of the things we're seeing is we're seeing a decade or a period of time very much like the 1960s. My fellow astrologer Barry Rosen has mentioned it as well, and a lot of phenomena we're seeing right now are going to be relatively similar to that. So you'll see a lot of protests in China, forced Xi to lift the strict COVID bans, and you're seeing, and there are also protests in Iran, and there was a relaxation of the protocol, not the protocols, the rules for dress in Iran. So you're seeing like these little, what I would call cracks in the foundation, which are setting up circumstances very similar to the late 60s. Now, the late 60s were also kind of a violent period, so just be prepared for that. But I don't think it will be a world war. I don't think it'll be anything like that. I think you're going to see a lot of street violence in a lot of different countries. And that will probably be true as Saturn moves into Aquarius and after January, and you'll see more pressure for social change. And also after Jupiter moves into Aries next April, and when we'll be expecting to see sudden change. People will be agitating for sudden change, for quick change. That'll be particularly pronounced after mid-January when Mars turns direct, I think. And I'm not seeing anything catastrophic happening, but I am seeing several governments essentially ending or being replaced by other governments. And so this will be a fascinating time to watch, especially after April of next year, because the demands will be very, very strong. The positions between tradition and reform will be more polarized, if that's conceivable. It's and the reason I say it'll become more polarized is because Jupiter is going to be very aggressive. It'll be in Aries, and Rahu will be very aggressive. It'll be in Aries. So that aggressive reform right now is coming from the Rahu side, which essentially is liberalization of standards, um, activity, trying to push previously disenfranchised groups to the center. A lot of attention on establishing good gosh representation of those groups, and you'll see a lot of fighting back after April. It's already started, but you'll see a lot of fighting back from more traditional segments of the society after April of next year. So it'll be fascinating. And Jupiter will essentially take, Rahu's more powerful than Jupiter, but Jupiter's will take center stage after, I think, oh gosh, next fall. Jupiter will tend to become more dominant than Rahu will. But next fall, you'll also see more aggressive action from disenfranchised or outsider groups. And I use outsider metaphorically. I'm not saying they're outsider, but people who have who are sort of like in the margins or have been marginalized by society. So basically, from this chart, looking at this week ahead. Oh, and by the way, I did notice there were a couple of eruptions of volcanoes, which I did mention in previous broadcasts. One in Hawaii and one, I believe, was in Indonesia. So I think we're going to see a lot more, just because of Mars and Taurus, we're going to see a lot more activity, a lot more buildup of steam. Mars is aspecting the sun, so we still have about another good 2-week period. There was an earthquake in Turkey about a week and a half ago, 6.0 earthquake. And I think you'll start to see a lot of activity in those areas, at least for the next couple of weeks, and maybe even as up until mid-January. I hope not, but that's a distinct possibility. The other thing to look at in terms of the chart for this week is Mars and Sun and Venus are still in opposition to each other. That tends to build up a certain amount of sexual tension or love between people. Venus and Mars are still aspecting each other. They're in each other's signs, but Venus is about to, within about 1 day, enter Sagittarius. So this will give a great deal of sensitivity or over emotionalism in relationships. And that'll be the cause of a lot of fights developing. So there's been a certain solidity, a certain commitment between people with this Mars-Venus aspect in this chart, a lot of loyalty, but unfortunately, with Venus entering this particular point in space, which is Mula Nakshatra, you'll see love affairs sort of like ripped up, re-examined, reassembled over the next couple of weeks. Some people will break up. Some people will get into large fights or arguments. This really isn't a permanent breakup combination. It's more of a argument because you hurt my feelings kind of a combination. And it, because I'm using that expression, it doesn't mean that men or women are excluded from that. It just basically means that that Venus, it will be more sensitive. It's more sensitive naturally when it moves into the sign Sagittarius. It expects a great deal from people when it's in Sagittarius. It has high ideals in love. Um, so if people fail to meet those ideals, there'll be arguments about it or fights about it. Mars is also aspecting Mercury. Again, we're in a season of political lying, which will last, I think, until another couple of months. To be honest, to be truthful with you, and a lot of what I would call throwing um, every accusation at the wall and seeing whether or not they stick. And this is true on both sides of the political fence. This will be true in other countries as well, not just the United States. The United States is not the only country suffering from things like this, contrary to what we seem to think here. We're not the only country undergoing crises of government. Great Britain, it's just UK just went through one. France encountered some a few months ago. Uh, West Germany is encountering them. Russia is definitely encountering them. China is encountering it. It seems to be pretty universal. So there's not, so certain parts will be hit more dramatically, but the United States is by no means unique. It's just more dramatic and it's more, I'm trying to think of a good way to put it, more. News is a competitive business in the United States. I'm sure it's competitive in other countries, but it's really competitive in the United States. So they, so we have to keep on seeing like the latest. So we have all these little cell phones right now. We're looking for like the latest thing to get upset about or get annoyed about, and that person's going to jail. That person should be in jail, etc. And again, this is not just on the Trump side. On the Trump side of things, a lot of people are saying about, or not a lot of people, some people are saying about Biden that he should be impeached, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a lot of this drama going back and forth. And that's just the way things are right now. This is the situation we find ourselves. Um, it's not pleasant. It's really unstable. It's kind of, um, it's just a mess, basically. And we'll be in this mess for at least another couple of weeks. One of the things to look forward to, though, with Saturn entering Aquarius is more concrete technological inventions, advances, also an increase in inventions that will help human beings and help society overall, as opposed to inventions which will just make more money. And let's see now. And Rahu and Ketu will stay in those signs for about another year. Then they go into Pisces where things really get confused, but Pisces and Virgo where things really get confused and really get overly analytical. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Let's just ask a little bit far in the future. So let's look at this at the chart for this week, this coming week. And you have the moon is in Aries. So we'll talk about Aries first of all. Aries will have a lot of focus on its home life, a lot of focus on money again, although there will be returns from investments that Aries had forgotten it had made, or money that it had forgotten that it owed people, or that people owed it. And Mars in the second house, this will be where most of its focus will be on financial security. There will be some fights with children, some fights with enemies. K2's in the sixth house. It'll have to, I'm sorry, K2's in the seventh house. Relationship partners will seem a little bit unpredictable or a little bit difficult to deal with. Venus and Sun are in the eighth house. This sign will seem very attractive to people in his company, because that's kind of a sexy placement, but it won't last as long as it did before, and that will move to Taurus pretty soon. But I'll explain that when I get to Taurus. Um, the um, Mercury's in the ninth house, which indicates rapid communications are coming to this sign. There'll be rapid learning. And Mercury is surely going to go retrograde, so we'll deal with that in an upcoming video. Saturn is in the 10th house, so again, a lot of career focus, a lot of focus on financial, on securing finances, at least for Aries. There's more financial emphasis in the sign, although there is some animosity in relationship life, but that's not really, that'll last for about another month or so, and then kind of calm down uh, for Aries. For Taurus, Taurus has Mars in the first house. This is a condition called Mars affliction. As a matter of fact, Aries has it too. I should have mentioned that. Aries has a Mars affliction in his chart as well. That means relationship-wise, these people will tend to be taken advantage of by relationship partners. And it's generally not a good time for any of the following signs to start relationships. That's Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Libra, Scorpio, and Sagittarius and Aquarius. So all those signs should exercise a good deal of caution in getting involved with members of with romantic relationships or even business partnerships. It doesn't mean you can't look, but just make sure you have a lot of protections built in, a lot of written agreements built in. Okay. So Mars is in Taurus, makes this sign kind of attractive. And Venus will be in the eighth house. That will amp up its attractiveness, but it will also amp up its ability to keep secrets or be a little bit sneaky. Gemini's ruler I'm sorry, the ruler of the second house is in the eighth house, so that tends to give this sign a lot of investigation, a lot of interest in misrepresenting itself. It'll be a little bit sneaky again. Third house lord is the moon. The moon's in the 11th house, so there'll be a lot of interest in financial gains and a lot of success in financial gains, but the money will be tough to hold on to. Leo has its ruler in the 7th house, so a lot of the emotional life of this individual will be taken up in relationship matters, and relationship partners will be demanding. Venus is also in that house, so the person will probably be involved with really good-looking relationship partners, but that's a little bit, again, that particular glow will fade away pretty quickly. Mercury in the eighth, that's actually a good combination for Mercury. It gives it the ability to investigate things and look into things really deeply. Saturn's in the ninth. Bosses will be difficult to deal with. Work will be kind of a struggle, but successful. Jupiter's in Pisces. This will be a good time for a person to actually engage their friends or start getting involved with friendships again. And for Moon and Rahu in the 12th house, that's an indication that there'll be some financial anxiety or financial worry. For Gemini has its Lord in the 7th house, so a lot of its attention will be on relationships and especially communication. And there'll be a little bit of a disruptive influence on relationships over the next couple of weeks because of Mercury being in Mula Nakshatra, which is a very difficult replacement. It can actually shut down communications pretty effectively, and it may be easy for relationship partners to lie more readily than they normally do. With K2 in the fifth house, again, children will be a little bit prone towards illness or unexpected infections. So that's something to watch out for. But this is also a very creative placement. People will have a lot of good ideas, especially in terms of how to connect with people and how to form partnerships with people. Venus and Sun are in the sixth house. This is a good combination um, for working on yourself in order to achieve beauty. Venus is about to move into the seventh house, so it will give a lot more romantic opportunities than normal for this sign over the next month or so. And Saturn's in the eighth, which tends to make the sign really dig deeply into what it wants concretely in life, and also, but again, relationship partners will be a little bit depressed. Jupiter's in the 10th, very good for career advancement. Moon and Rahu are excellent for sudden bursts of recognition in career, but the person will have to work hard to maintain those. And Mars is in the 12th. So again, this is Mars reflection, which we said before. So it's a little bit difficult relationship-wise for this sign. Cancer has its Lord in the 10th house of career. So it's in Aries. So Cancer, counting from Cancer, Aries is 10 signs away. So there's a lot of focus on career and action in the world, and a lot of frustration with career as well. So there will be some fame, some recognition, but it will be hard to maintain. It'll be like big flashes, big announcements, big fame, and it'll give a certain degree of success to individuals. Um, so like magazine covers, if you're in a field that um, matches that, or else uh, other recognition in the field. But again, like I said, kind of fleeting, kind of ephemeral. The second house, Lord, is the Sun. He's placed in the fifth house, along with Venus. So this will give uh, delightful or charming children, a lot of focus on love affairs, a lot of attraction of beautiful people. Mercury's in the sixth, some communication problems for the sign as well. Saturn's in the seventh. This combination, the person will really be interested in maintaining their relationship, though it'll be like a blood oath in terms of maintaining a relationship. It will probably change in emphasis or degree when Saturn enters Aquarius in January, but right now that this relationship is strongly committed. They're strongly committed to a relationship. If they're not in a relationship, they'll stay out of a relationship until January 23rd. For Jupiter, Jupiter's in the ninth house, very good for additional learning. And Mars is in the 11th house, a good combination for getting a lot of publicity and a lot of fame again. For Virgo has Jupiter in the seventh house. So this means a lot of people like this sign, want to help this sign. This sign will study a lot. It will go to teachers. It will go, it will get advice. But also it will enter into partnerships with teachers. And I think one of the things that's noteworthy about this is this gives so many relationship opportunities to Virgo. So Virgo doesn't have Mars affliction right now, but they'll be slowly developing relationship opportunities because Saturn's aspecting Jupiter. the person may hesitate or maybe a little bit fearful about entering into new relationships. K2 is in the second house. Some problem with the sign in terms of expressing itself, some difficulty in understanding its speech, or it may have some difficulty in communicating exactly what it wants, or its speech will be misunderstood. So it will be accused of doing controversial or um, mischievous things when it's not really. Sun and Venus are in the third house. It gives the sun a great deal of courage, a great deal of ambition. Venus and Mercury will be in the fourth house. Venus is in the third house right now, so there's a strong desire for beauty, art, entertainment. Now slip will be more focused on education next month and more focused on home, beautifying the home next month. Saturn's in the fifth house, indicates some difficulty with children, and also children will have mood swings, at least from this particular combination. Sixth house has no planets in it except for our old friend Neptune, who I normally don't use, and this can give fear of disease, but not real disease. Moon and Rahu in the eighth house, though, can give some chronic health problems which are resurfacing for the sign. And so I would advise the sign to be careful of his health because of that particular conjunction in the eighth house. So parts of the body that may be attacked would be either the kidneys or the sexual organs or the elimination systems. Okay, so just a worse the wise for Virgos. Jupiter in the seventh is absolutely stellar. This is a good combination for, no pun intended, this is a good combination for learning, for teaching, for advising. It's just great. And again, you'll attract a lot of interesting people into your life as well. People who are smarter than you are, or as smart, or who will give you good advice. Okay. Mars is in the ninth house. There'll be a tendency to act quickly, but this also is sort of like what I would call a redo combination. So a lot of the stuff you thought was done once, especially regarding property, you'll have to redo again. Mercury's the lord of the 10th house. It's in the fourth house. So this sign will be much more active at work and much more focused on work, especially work from home. 11th house lord is the moon, and it's with Rahu in the chart in the eighth house. So there'll be a lot of interest in spiritual life and spiritual matters. For Libra has, I'm gonna check my time. Libra has K2 in the first house, aspected by Saturn. So again, similar to what we saw with Mars in Taurus retrograde, this means the person will be doing a lot of work, but it won't be recognized. The person will be either diminished or not considered to be important, or not noticed. It doesn't really, actually, one of the funniest things about this is that at certain times when K2 is actually in this particular sign, it actually pulls a lot of notice. And this one thing I should have mentioned before, right now K2 is stationary direct. I use the true lunar node, which allows for Rahu and K2 to move backwards and forwards in the chart. And K2 and Rahu, and this usually signals big events or big shifts in status. So a lot of the things we're seeing, like the South African impeachment hearings, will usually start, or disruptions will usually start when K2 and Rahu are in signs. This is also probably the reason why we're seeing a lot of volcanic activity, because of K2 being in that sign, or being in that status, excuse me. And the Lord of the first house is Venus, is focused on money, it's very focused on financial gains. And it's also the Lord of the 11th is in the second house. So that's a combination for financial improvement over the next few months, or the next month at least. And Mercury's in the third house, is strong desire for knowledge, strong desire to learn things. It's essentially what I would call detailed knowledge. So the person wants to explore the more intricate parts of its field. And, essentially it wants to be a scholar, but also use the knowledge practically. So we have Mercury and Jupiter in angles from each other. It's a good time for learning. It's a good time for exploring new methods of learning, especially for Libra. Venus is going to be in the same sign as Mercury as well, which will increase the ability to learn and increase the ability to understand and comprehend, and also increase the sign's relative attractiveness. It will also make this sign less weak than it's been over the past couple of months. Libra's had a tough time in terms of physical strength and determination over the past few months. Saturn's in the fourth house. We already said that it aspects the first house, so that makes the sign work awfully hard for basically tedious or unrewarding tasks. After January 23rd, that'll change a bit, and the sign will be able to do more forward-thinking things and more abstract things and less physically intense things. Jupiter's in the sixth house, so again, there'll be some kind of problem with people who are educated, or with people who are learned or respected in their fields. Libra often actively opposes these individuals because it's ruled by Venus, who's the teacher of a separate set of entities, which are, basically rebellious. But this particular combination actually allows Libra to learn and to struggle through and to improve itself over the next few months. So this actually isn't a bad placement, but it can slow the sign down a little bit, and can make it dwell too much on illnesses and enemies and reasons why it can't do things rather than why it can do things. Moon is in the seventh house along with Rahu, can give some illusions about relationships and illusions about career. This doesn't necessarily mean that your dreams, the dreams you're having right now, aren't realistic. It does mean that you'll have to work harder than you think you will in order to make them come to pass. So just keep that in mind as you're thinking about schemes to conquer the world, especially for Libra. Just think about how you're going to do it, what impact it'll have on the people around you, and think up some strategy. Just don't go pell-mell into it. Think up some strategy, think up some planning. Rahu is a great planning planet, or planning graha. And so I think this is a good time to do that, to plan for change. And also because there's a strong desire for change with this combination, especially in career. Mars is in the eighth house. And again, that's the seventh house lord in the eighth house. So relationship partners will be spending a lot and will be focused on property a lot, and will also be ready to argue at the drop of a hat. For the rest of the sign, K2's in So there's not much else happening in the rest of the sign. Good for gains. Let's move on to Scorpio. Scorpio has Mars in the seventh house, so it's very strongly focused on relationships. It's very communicative this week, and it'll be communicating words of love to people over the next couple of weeks. Saturn is in the third house, gives it a lot of bravery. Jupiter's in the fifth, gives us smart kids. Um, and let's see now, Moon and Rahu are in the sixth house, so this gives it a lot of worry or anxiety about the future. This is one of the downsides and worries about its luck. Mars is in the seventh. It'll cause fights with relationship partners again. And K2's in the 12th house, good for spiritual advancement, good for career success, but um, only by giving up things like time to develop that. Sagittarius has its Lord in the fourth house. So again, this is strong focus on education and also a strong focus on money and on earning money, working hard to earn money. Um, again, some inflationary pressure will continue. It's not going to go away anytime soon. And that will affect Sagittarius actually more strongly than other signs. Moon and Rahu are in the fourth house, or in the fifth house, excuse me. And this gives some disagreements or some problems with children, greedy children, basically. Mars is in the sixth house. The children will want to fight or argue. Good for creativity, though. It's a good creative combination to have this combination of planets. K2 is in the 11th. You'll have unusual friends or spiritual friends come into your life, or even people who are poor or down on their luck come into your life for friendships. For Capricorn, Saturn's in the first house. That's what's called a Sasha Yoga. So it makes the sign kind of authoritarian, kind of listen to me and do as I say. Uh, but, but, but it won't ask you to do anything. It won't do itself. Jupiter's in the third, a lot of diplomatic skills. And finally, Mars is in the fifth, so some arguments with children. And K2's in the 10th house. So again, not much recognition career-wise for this sign, as we said before, for Libra. And Sun and Venus are in the 11th house, so good financial gains. Mercury in the 12th, good for investing overseas. For Aquarius, Aquarius has Mercury in the 11th house, which is good for financial gains, good for luck from creative ideas, and also good for luck from investigative work. So Mercury rules the 8th house in this chart. And let's see now. And for the rest of the sign, relationship life, get a lot of focus on relationship life, but it'll be a little bit under the surface. It won't be obvious. And also, Mars aspects Venus, so there's more potential for fights about home or ownership of, of property. Finally, Pisces has Jupiter in the first house. That's what I told you is a Hamsa Yoga before. And this Hamsa Yoga, this entire sign will be very dissatisfied with the amount of money and with people not paying attention to it, not paying attention to its advice, unfortunately. And Venus and Sun are in the 10th house, are in the 9th house, excuse me. So that will make the sign much more willing to listen to bosses or supervisors. And Mercury's in the 10th house, good for career life and good for notification about career opportunities. Saturn in the 11th, any gains will be slow. Okay. All right. So let's look at the time and space change chart. I didn't leave myself much time for this week. No, hardly any time at all. So let's All right, so I'm not gonna try to expand the chart. Yeah, I don't like it when it does this. Let me see. All right, time and space change. All right, here we go. So the potential trouble points or anxiety points are actually close to Hawaii. And so you can see the Moon and Rahu combination over here. Um, there will be uh, some bad luck around southern Alaska, around this area of Alaska. And I think you'll also see um, some some real strong legal matters come up around Arizona and New Mexico over the next over the next uh, couple of months or so, and also up as far north as Montana and into Canada. Uh, there's a Moon Rahu combination on the East Coast, and we also have Saturn, so we can see kind of an economic stress points developing here. Um, my guess is it will be around fuel, but also there may be some political scandals from this Moon Rahu conjunction over here, especially around Massachusetts and into Maine and even touching into New York and Washington and following all the way down into um, Santo Domingo and all the way down into northern South America, Colombia, uh, down into Venezuela, and even Brazil, uh, Peru, and down into Argentina. Argentina has been going through kind of a nightmare. Saturn's transiting um, through Brazil, so there should be some energy shortages there too. From this chart, we have um, a Mars Sun conjunction happening in the middle of near the Azores. So some possibility of violence in the Azores. Um, I don't know whether or not it'll be earthquake activity or volcanic activity. I hope not. And Iceland also has a kind of a setup for um, not for volcanoes, but for changes in government, I think. Uh, England and Europe have no planetary lines over them, but the closest planetary line is Jupiter, so there will be some investigations into uh, into government and even some realignments. Italy, as you probably know, has a new prime minister, and she's very conservative. Um, the there's a moon line going through Turkey, so there should be some political scandals and maybe some fear from uh, of earthquakes or attacks, and also near the Ukraine, uh, these two lines look like there's going to be continued violence there. Russia is experiencing some troop fatigue. That's been reported, but I I wouldn't count Russia out quite yet. Uh, it's it's really too early to see that. I'm not rooting for them. I'm just saying that their chart's not good, but neither is the Ukraine's chart. To be honest, I hope this is over quickly, but I just quick would be late January, uh, and we have over India and So Iran looks a little calmer. The government's lifted some controls, and there's a Sun-Venus line going over here and going through Pakistan and close to Afghanistan. So, and even in Western India, there should be some flooding and even some violence or aggravation in that part of the world. Through here, some land disputes all the way from Southwest India, all the way up to Bangladesh and into China. And there'll be a lot of political intrigue, I think, also in India. For the other lines we have right down here, there's a Venus line, so that's what it has me worried about the flooding, because Venus does bring a lot of rains, and it's close to the Jupiter line. Finally, let's go over here. We have Moon Rahu coming over, so there'll be some fear of economic problems in China and all the way up into Manchuria and all the way up into the Soviet Union. There'll be violence, I think, actually in the in the middle of, I'm sorry, not the Soviet Union, Russia. It hasn't been the Soviet Union for years. And there's a Moon Rahu line passing over Vietnam and heading into Indonesia. That's where the earthquake, the volcanic activity occurred. And I think also there may be some more depressing news, depressing weather news, and governmental news in Japan. So keep posted. These are challenging times. And New Guinea also has a sun line running through it, so there may be some potential of a dictatorship forming in New Guinea. And Venus and Mercury form over next to Australia. Sun, maybe some stricter than usual government policies in Australia, especially the eastern part of the country. And let's see now. And New Zealand seems to be relatively unscathed right now. So that's about the way I see it. The areas I'm kind of concerned about are the Moon Rahu conjunction. So Hawaii, this one right here, near New England and Canada, and hitting down into the Caribbean and into most of South America. And also this line running up through Turkey and Russia and through South America, very close to South Africa, as you can see from the map. So that scandal will increase shortly. So that's about all I have, I think, for for looming into the camera. That's all I have for this week. Again, please subscribe, like, share, and I'll see you very, very soon. I love you all and bless you, everyone. And I hope you're having, however you celebrate this time of year, I hope you're having a wonderful time. Thank you very much for watching. See you next week. Namaste. I love you all.